let's talk about healing and the idea of the gritty realism type setting in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. Again, this is the section of the Dungeon Master's Guide no one really talks about too much, so if you're interested, stay tuned. Alright folks, welcome back to Nerd Immersion's Guide to Everything, the video series where I review stuff that you may have forgotten about in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and probably other books, because there's some interesting stuff in the Player's Handbook as well. So we're back here in Chapter 9 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Dungeon Master's Workshop chapter, and we're going to talk all about healing. And something that I kind of an issue that I sort of have with 5th edition, not really, but it's something that I've always had an issue with, and that's the idea. Well, we'll talk about this, but I'll just give you my little monologue here. Maybe I'm wrong, and you guys tell me, but I've always felt like I have never been 100% comfortable with the idea of a long rest fixes everything. And that concept, and what I mean by that is you sleep for 8 hours, and like you could have been beaten down, almost dead the day before. You sleep for 8 hours and everything goes away, right? And that's realistic with 5th edition, right? You could have been down, failed 2 death saving throws, basically barely came back, stabilized, were unconscious for 4 hours. Your allies were all beat to shit. You got all cut up and damaged and everything. And you just go to sleep for 8 hours and you wake up refreshed, brand new, everything's back, no issues. And that always has been like an issue that I've grappled with myself. One, that's how the game is designed. It's designed to be like that you can long rest and get everything back. And that's fine. But I've always felt like it might make the game more real. It might make the characters more invested if things are a little tougher, harder for you to get all your hit points back, or things like that. And there is this idea of the gritty realism setting, which we'll talk about, but there's a section here under adventuring options called healing, and I wanted to talk about that. So it's a couple of ways you can tweak things, whether for strength and making it easier or making it harder. One is this option of the healer's kit dependency. A healer's kit is an item found in the Player's Handbook. Basically, what a healer's kit does is it allows you to stabilize somebody when they go to 0 hit points. If you have the healer feat, then it allows you to also heal people a little bit as well. But this is the idea that people can't gain any hit dice, or use their hit dice rather, to heal on a short rest unless someone expends a use of a healer's kit. And honestly, that's something super simple, but I actually kind of really like that. As a game where I played a game recently where my players were basically stopping to short rest every hour because they just got so messed up in the fight. And this is on me, right, for not having the short rest get interrupted, which I should, but I didn't. So like about every hour in game, they'd get into a really tough fight, they'd short rest heal. They get into another tough fight, they short rest heal. And again, there's nothing wrong with that because in the course of the game that happens like that, right? That's no big deal. But if you think about it like from a cinematic perspective, that's kind of boring. So this idea of having a healer's kit, hey guys, we've only got one use of a healer's kit left, who needs to heal on the short rest? That I kind of like. That might be a simple fix to make things a little... It also does add to the shopping side of things. People got to go and shop and buy healer's kit, but it's something different to add a little complexity. I don't know. What are your thoughts? There's this other idea that go the other way, and I feel this is kind of 4th edition-y with the healing surge option, which is allowing everybody some sort of inborn healing, which is not something that every class has in 5th edition. It's sort of like a fighter's second wind, but pumped up. So as an action, a character could use a healing surge and spend half of their hit dice, up to half their hit dice. For each hit dice spent in this way, they roll the die and either Constitution modifier ceiling as normal. They regain hit points equal to the total. They can decide to spend an additional hit die after each roll. A character who uses a healing surge can't do so again until they finish a short or long rest. Under this optional rule, a character regains all spent hit dice on a long rest. With a short rest, a character regains hit die equal to their level divided by 4, minimum of 1. For a more superheroic feel, you can let a character use a healing surge as a bonus action rather than an action. So this kind of going the other way, making things easier, is you get all of your hit dice back on a long rest. Currently, you get half on a long rest. And you can use like a big boon of healing. Now, how I would handle this is maybe there's a magic item, maybe there's a special thing that they get from like a god or a boon or something like that. I like the healing surge idea isn't bad. I think it would make things a little too easy. The idea is, though, if you do this, you can throw harder fights at your players because they can take more, right? They can tank more, they can heal more. I think the idea of this maybe being something that allowing this, but maybe this is something that the party needs to spend something on. Maybe like Healing Surge is a feat, and they spend a feat to get this ability. Now, is that going to cause issues with the party if not everybody gets as many feats? Like the fighters and the rogues may want to get this, and then other people feel like they're not healing as much. I don't know. But maybe an item or a scroll or something that lets people do this every so often, or if they spend extra money, they could do this. That could be something cool. And then there's this idea, which is something I actually forgot because I was trying to come up with my own means of slow natural healing. And I was thinking, like, back in the old days when I started playing D&D, you didn't get all your hit points back on a long rest. You got a small amount, and there were items you could do to try to increase that. But this concept is you don't regain all of your hit points at the end of a long rest. Instead, you can spend hit dice to heal at the end of a long rest, just like you would with a short rest. This optional rule prolongs the amount of time the characters need to recover from their wounds without the benefits of magical healing, and works for grittier, more realistic campaigns. So from that, it sounds like the thought process is you still get half of your hit dice back on a long rest, but you spend them, even if you got all of your hit dice back on a long rest, but that's how you healed, is at the end of a long rest you have to spend your hit dice to heal. Again, something I like. I think it makes it more realistic. It makes certain feats and certain magic items infinitely better because you're able to heal better on a short rest or when rolling hit dice. That's an option. I may look into doing that. And again, this is something I feel like I would love to implement in one of my ongoing campaigns. But at this point, it hasn't been like that thus far in the game, so it kind of feels like I'm shortchanging the players if I switch to that right now. So I'm thinking maybe something happens in the greater scheme of the world and the healing magic changes, or the god of healing gets attacked or weakened or something, and then that explains it in game-wise why it changed now. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is this too much? I think if you got all of your hit dice back on a long rest, but at the end of every long rest, you spent your hit dice, like you get, so let's say you have, you still spend them at the end of a long rest. So I'm not sure how that works, because my thought process was if you get them all back and then you can heal, like let's say you have 10 hit dice and you spend 9 to heal yourself on the overnight, you have 1 to use throughout the day, but then again at the end of the long rest that night you get them all back, but then, I don't know. I'm curious. It's an interesting concept, and I like the idea of the grittier, more realistic campaign. I will also say I've never played in a game where it's set up like this, so I may be being a full-on hypocrite that I want things to be harder for my players, yet I haven't tried it myself to find it out, so I will say that up front. Although I do think I would like that because it would add, one, healing potions and healing characters would go a ton further, right? Clerics would be super valued in your world. Paladins, anybody that has any kind of healing, even a fighter's second wind ability goes leaps and bounds further when healing is so much harder. And then there's the idea of these rest variants. I'll touch on Epic Heroism very briefly because the main focus of this was the harder version. But Epic Heroism was short rests take 5 minutes instead of an hour. So that means you can short rest in almost no time to heal. This change makes combat more routine since characters can easily recover after every battle. You might want to make combat encounters more difficult to compensate. It says spellcasters using the system can afford to burn through their spell slots quickly, especially... Oh, sorry, I mistake that. Short rest is 5 minutes, long rest is 1 hour. So that's... I misunderstood, I misspoke. Short rest is 5 minutes, long rest is an hour. Spellcasters using the system can afford to burn through spell slots more quickly, especially at higher levels. Consider allowing spellcasters to restore expended spell slots equally to only half their maximum spell slots at the end of a long rest, and limit spell slots restored to 5th level or lower. Only a full 8-hour rest allows them to restore everything. So again, this is an idea of like you may want things. You're just going to go hard, and it's going to be really easy. People are going to be able to recover faster, and I'm not sure. The idea of still keeping a long rest at 8 hours, but a short rest being 5 minutes, where I've heard people shorten those for the purposes of moving the game along, but I don't know. And then here's the idea that I also wanted to focus on because people did ask about this, the idea of gritty realism. And this one, I think, would be a crazy short-term campaign or a one-shot. The variant rest is a short rest, takes 8 hours, and a long rest takes 7 days. Can you imagine that? What you now are used to in 5th edition for getting everything back is the equivalency of a short rest, and a long rest takes a full 7 days. So remember, that would be 7 days to get all of your spell slots back, 7 days to get long rest recharge abilities back, 7 days to get all of your hit points back. This puts the brakes on the campaign, requiring the players to carefully judge the benefits and drawbacks of combat. You're absolutely right. If you only have 4 first level slots and 3 second level slots, and 7 days of rest need to happen before you get those back, you can definitely be sure you're going to be using a lot more cantrips, and you're going to savor when you use those spells. In theory, though, that has to work the other way for the enemies. They also need to have that. So, like, do I throw a fireball now, or do I wait and save it for later? Characters can't afford to engage in too many battles in a row, and all adventuring requires careful planning. This approach encourages the characters to spend time out of the dungeon. It's a good option for campaigns that emphasize intrigue, politics, and interactions among other NPCs, and in which combat is rare or something to be avoided rather than rushed into. I like this idea. I like the idea of using this kind of thing in a primarily social intrigue game or a political-based game, where, like, again, I kind of almost see it in, like, my mind, I kind of go to, like, a Game of Thrones, because at least in the early, I mean, if you watched the show or read the books, but, like, in the early stuff, it felt more gritty realistic, where there was less superhero kind of things happening. It was rough. People got hurt. They were laid up for a long time because they got into a fight. And the main focus of that was political intrigue. And, like, combat happened, sure, but it was brutal and it was realistic and people died, and that's just how it was. Now, if you threw magic into there with Game of Thrones, then that might be more like, I mean, there isn't magic, but like D&D magic, it might have been more like this. So I'm curious, what do you guys think about these different rest options? Am I the only one? Am I in the minority that I feel like the idea of an 8-hour rest fixes everything? There is a section in here, which we may do in a separate video, for lingering injuries, where you basically suffer a significant amount of damage and it takes you longer to recover from that. Like, you might have a bum leg, or, you know, you get some sort of wound or something, and it takes you a long time to recover from that. And that sort of, again, helps to reflect that realism, right? You get stabbed and you're down to 0 hit points and beat up a bunch. It might take, you know, right now you could just like, I got knocked unconscious at 2 death saving throws, basically died. And then, like, you wake up from, or you just go to sleep for 8 hours and you're back to normal. Everything's fine, no issues. Got all my spell slots back. I'm 100%. It's like nothing ever happened. That's kind of my thing where and some of that can be played off in roleplay, right? You can roleplay it like, hey, maybe I'm a little more cautious now because I got my shit pushed in. I don't know. But I'm curious what you guys think. Have you tried any of this? Have you tempted gritty realism or epic heroism the other way, where it's a lot of healing? What have you thought about this healing surge idea? Or what about the healer's kit dependency for short rests? That's such a simple thing, but it makes things a little bit more difficult, but I don't feel like too much so. And, like, also finding a healer's kit in a dungeon could be a lifesaver for the party. And then again, your thoughts on the idea of the slow natural healing. A thought I had was you healed hit points equal to your level on a short rest. So if you short rest and or maybe double your level plus your constitution modifier. So if you're level 10 and you sleep, you get 20 hit points back plus your constitution modifier. That is more similar to the way things used to be back in the day. And it also just meant you would spend a lot more, like if you're going to sleep and nobody's at full health, you're going to spend a lot more of your healing spells late at night to heal everybody up, or pay for spellcasting services to heal people rather than just like, let's just go take a nap and everything will be fine. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments down below. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, be sure to do so. I'll see you next time.